What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Friday, April 25th, 2025, and I have an emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now it is 17:20 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from India and Pakistan. So I wanted to update you guys on the situation over there. So we have some new video footage now showing Pakistani tanks and heavy artillery being moved to the border of India. What you're looking at here is video footage from late last night. You can see these Pakistani tanks moving to the border of India. This is extremely concerning. Okay, multiple tanks, and what's interesting here is these tanks actually have war markings on them. So if you look at the hull of that tank, you can see an upside down V painted in white. And the reason why they do that is to prevent friendly fire so they can identify each other's tanks. So this is very, very serious, and it's a huge sign that Pakistan may be getting ready to invade Kashmir. Now, there are mostly Muslims living in Kashmir, and the Pakistan government has kind of always considered Kashmir to be like a part of Pakistan. So it's possible that Pakistan may invade and try to take Kashmir, similar to how Putin invaded Crimea. Okay, so this is a very, very serious situation. And the Indian Army confirmed last night that Pakistani forces initiated small arms fire at multiple points along the line of control. Indian forces responded, and no casualties have been reported so far. So the Pakistani army fired upon the Indian army, okay, over the border. That is very, very serious. And there's reports of Indian Air Force fighter jets and airborne early warning aircraft being scrambled today. So India has scrambled their Air Force, their AWACS planes, their fighter jets. They're getting ready for war with Pakistan. And India moved security forces to the border of Pakistan, and apparently some clashes have already broken out between the Indian security forces and the Pakistani-sponsored terrorist groups. And we're also hearing of GPS and satellite interference around northern and western India, also in eastern and northern Pakistan. Okay, so there's very strong GPS and satellite jamming going on along the border of Kashmir. Okay, and India has formally blocked the flow of the Indus River into Pakistan by closing all 4 gates controlling water via dams and canals. Pakistan has previously warned that such a blockade would be seen as an act of war. So basically a suspension of the Indus River Water Treaty, which has been in place since 1960. The Indus River flows from the Himalaya Mountains southwestward towards northern India. It then crosses into Pakistan and flows due south through all of Pakistan, emptying into the Arabian Sea. The river provides Pakistan with fresh water for its people, and we have satellite imagery coming out now that's confirming that the water has been shut off, okay? And here we have another video coming out of Pakistan showing more Pakistani tanks and heavy equipment being moved to the border of India. Okay, so the Pakistanis need the water from the Indus River to survive because Pakistan is a dry country, it's a desert country, and the Indus River is the lifeblood of Pakistan. Okay, and India has shut off that lifeblood, and so now Pakistan could theoretically be justified to use military force due to a violation of the Indus River Treaty, okay? And they could use that as an excuse. I'm not saying it's a justification. I don't think it's right, but that could be their excuse to go into Kashmir and send forces in to secure the river, secure the water supply, and then while they're there, they'll just annex Kashmir and incorporate it back into Pakistan, okay? Basically the same thing that Putin did with Crimea and with the invasion of Ukraine. It was all about the water supply for Crimea, supposedly that Ukraine was closing off. So this is very, very serious. And Pakistan and India each have about 150 nuclear warheads. The average size warhead is between 5 to 10 kilotons. So they're very small nuclear warheads. They're actually smaller than our tactical nuclear warheads that we have. So they're actually smaller than the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs, which were like 10 to 20 kilotons. But they do have some big ones that go up to 40 kilotons. And India is actually in the process of developing an ICBM. They don't have an ICBM yet that can reach anywhere in the world, but they do have missiles that can basically reach like Europe and all of the Middle East, okay? So this is a very, very serious situation. And the Pakistan Foreign Ministry released a statement saying that any attempt to stop or divert the flow of water belonging to Pakistan will be considered as an act of war and respond with full force across the complete spectrum of national power. Wow. So Pakistan will consider this an act of war and will respond with full force across the complete spectrum of national power. And the Indian Water Resources Minister, C.R. Patil, said, "We will ensure that not a single drop of the Indus River's water reaches Pakistan." Wow, that is really, really strong statement there. And Pakistan has closed its airspace to all Indian airlines, and Pakistan has canceled all visas for Indian nationals, and Indian nationals have to leave within 48 hours. And Pakistan's defense minister claimed that the attack in Kashmir was a false flag. That was the terrorist attack that kicked off this whole situation here. Okay, so Pakistan is saying that it was a false flag by India. And India is now telling its citizens to leave Pakistan immediately. The Indian Army chief landed in Kashmir last night, and India has issued a readiness alert to all government hospitals in Kashmir. Okay, so they're getting ready for a war in Kashmir. The hospitals are on high alert to take wounded soldiers, massive numbers of casualties, civilians and soldiers alike. And the Pakistan defense minister warned of a nuclear response last night. He said any action initiated by India will receive a massive response. If they begin attacking or anything of the sort, there will be a major retaliation. It would clearly escalate into a full-scale war. Tensions between nuclear-armed nations are always alarming. The world needs to pay attention. These are two nuclear states on the subcontinent. If things spiral out of control, the consequences will be catastrophic. Wow. Okay, so basically, the Pakistani defense minister warning of a nuclear strike on India and a nuclear exchange. And according to reports, Pakistan's Foreign Office has set up an operation room already due to the rising tensions. And here we have some more footage coming out of Pakistan. You can see these tanks moving to the border of India. This is a massive buildup, guys. Okay, massive. And the Times of Israel is reporting that Israel is deeply concerned that the U.S. is moving fast towards a bad deal with Iran that won't block nuclear weapons. They believe talks are very advanced. Apparently, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held urgent meetings with his cabinet, and he's concerned that the deal won't remove all traces of Iran's nuclear program. And during his recent interview with Time magazine, U.S. President Donald Trump was asked if he was worried Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu might drag the U.S. into a war with Iran, to which he responded, "No, by the way, he may go into a war, but we're not getting dragged in." prompting the interviewer to ask if the U.S. would stay out of a war if Israel starts it, with Trump then stating, "No, I didn't say that. You asked if he'd drag me in like I'd go in unwillingly. No, I may go in very willingly if we can't get a deal. If we don't make a deal, I'll be leading the pack." Wow. So it looks like Trump has not ruled out military action against Iran. And remember, Trump's 2-month deadline for the peace deal is next week, okay, May the 5th. So, this big strike on Iran could still happen as soon as next weekend or in the coming weeks. And Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara says that Syria is interested in joining the Abraham Accords and normalizing ties with Israel in exchange for sanctions relief. And the U.S. will demand that Putin recognize Ukraine's right to an adequately equipped and numerically represented army and the possibility of developing its arms industry. So if you remember, one of the things that Putin disliked about Ukraine was the fact that they had a functioning military, and he wants Ukraine to be demilitarized. Well, the U.S. is going to demand that Putin recognize that Ukraine has a right to have an adequate military to defend itself. And here we have some more footage coming out of Pakistan. You can see all these Pakistani soldiers marching to the border of India. Wow. And the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that important meetings may take place in the coming days, which should bring peace to Ukraine. And Trump said that Ukraine, headed by Volodymyr Zelensky, has not signed the final papers on the very important rare earth deal with the United States. It is at least 3 weeks late. Hopefully it will be signed immediately. Work on the overall peace deal between Russia and Ukraine is going smoothly. Success seems to be in the future. So that's what Trump is saying about the peace deal. And here we have some video footage of the dam in India that was closed off last night. This is the Indus River, okay? So you can see that the spillway here is completely dry. If you look closely, there's no water going through that spillway, and you can see the water piling up behind the dam, okay? So India has closed off this dam. You can see absolutely zero water coming through that spillway. And then here we have the order from the Indian government to put government hospitals on high alert in the Kashmir region, okay? And Russia used North Korean ballistic missiles as part of a combined strike on Ukraine 2 nights ago, according to Defense Express. During the attack on Kiev, Russian invaders used KN-23 ballistic missiles along with Caliber cruise missiles and Shahed-136 drones from Iran. And satellite imagery revealed that the Antonov production plant in Kiev was hit by an Iskander missile during the Russian air attack on Ukraine 2 nights ago. So Antonov is a plane company. They make planes, okay? And Reuters is reporting that congressional Republicans plan a sweeping $150 billion defense package, including an initial $27 billion boost for Trump's Golden Dome missile defense shield. So they want to increase our defense budget by $150 billion plus $27 billion for Trump's Golden Dome. And that's for this year. So that's going to push our defense budget to over $1 trillion. Remember, Trump said that he was going to cut our defense spending. Well, it looks like he's doing exactly the opposite, and he's actually increasing it. And that just makes me wonder if we're preparing for war with Russia, China, Iran, World War III. Why the sudden increase when Hegseth and Trump were trying to cut our defense spending? Very, very concerning. And the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Thursday that the Kremlin is ready to reach a deal with the U.S. on Ukraine, although some elements need fine-tuning. And the Kremlin said it is continuing its contacts with the U.S. on a possible Ukraine deal. The Kremlin said it has no contacts with the Europeans or Ukraine. And Trump said that negotiations with Russia and Ukraine are progressing well, but the situation remains very fragile. And Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to Ukraine for the U.S., met with Putin today in Moscow. And what's interesting is he skipped the meeting in London to meet with our allies, our NATO allies in London about the peace deal. He completely skipped it and went to Russia instead. That is very, very alarming. And this afternoon, we have some unusual reconnaissance flights over the United States. I've personally never seen a flight like this before in the past several years of monitoring flights on a daily basis almost. So you can see this RC-135 rivet joint took off from Dallas area, and this is a recon plane operated by the U.S. Air Force, and it did this massive reconnaissance sweep of the entire eastern seaboard and the Gulf Coast. So it flew along the Louisiana Gulf Coast, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, then went up to the Carolinas, then it went up to Virginia, Pennsylvania, up to New York, and then it turned around and came back. So it did a giant reconnaissance sweep of the entire eastern seaboard and the Gulf Coast. That is very unusual. And also simultaneously, there was an AWACS plane off the coast of North Carolina near the Outer Banks doing loops over here. So there must be some kind of a threat to the eastern seaboard and to the Gulf Coast. Very, very concerning. And also today we've had a number of unusual nuclear codes transmitted. We had a 164 character nuclear code earlier this morning, which is very rare. The standard length is 30 characters. So 164 characters is extremely rare. We also had some tactical nuclear codes, and there was also a very powerful over-the-horizon radar that was activated this afternoon. And Trump admitted today that his words about ending the war in Ukraine in 24 hours were more of a joke than anything concrete. And the Philippines and the U.S. kicked off the 40th iteration of their annual Balikatan joint military exercise. A total of over 14,000 troops from the two countries are taking part in the 19-day exercise, whose name means shoulder to shoulder in Filipino. So that is huge news, guys. 14,000 troops taking part in this exercise. Wow. And we just recently deployed the Typhoon missile system to the Philippines, which can launch both Tomahawk missiles and also the SM-6 missiles, which are able to shoot down ballistic missiles. And they're also talking about deploying the Dark Eagle hypersonic missile system to that part of the world as well. And what you're looking at here is some unusual reconnaissance in Poland last night. We had a NATO E-3 Sentry. This is an AWACS plane patrolling the border of Poland and Belarus, and specifically it was looping near the tri-border of Belarus, Poland, and Ukraine near the city of Brest in southwestern Belarus. And right in that city, or very close to it, is a massive base where thousands and thousands of Russian troops and former Wagner forces were relocated 2 years ago. And they're building up their forces over here to potentially invade Poland at some point in the near future or in the long term. It's hard to say, but this is very unusual to see. And during the massive air attack on Ukraine 2 nights ago, 3 Russian supersonic bombers were used, the Tu-160s, which is very unusual because that's their premier nuclear bomber. That would be like us using B-2s to bomb the Houthis, which is what we've been doing supposedly, but then there were some contradictory statements made. First they said they were using them, then they said they were not using them. But it's very unusual to use one of your primary nuclear bombers in an attack on a proxy war, okay? So that tells me that they're either training for a nuclear strike on Ukraine, or I don't know what they're doing, but the Tu-160 is Russia's best bomber, basically, okay? But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I will be back later on tonight with more breaking news. I'll be in the live stream. I'll provide a live update for you guys. But that's pretty much it for now. Have a good evening. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.